Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to you and Ranking Member Peters for convening this hearing on threats to our homeland. Thank you to all three of our witnesses, not only for being here today, but for your service to our country. And I hope you will carry back with you to the men and women you lead our sincere thanks from a grateful country for all they do to keep us safe. Director Travers, I wanted to start with a question to you. Last month, I traveled to Afghanistan and Pakistan and heard firsthand the concerns of our military and embassy personnel about the growing and very real threat of ISIS-K, the ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan. I heard clearly that ISIS-K threatens not only U.S. forces in Afghanistan, but also has designs on striking the U.S. homeland. You said last week that there are more than 20 ISIS branches globally, some of which are using sophisticated technology such as drones to conduct operations. Despite our key victories against ISIS in Syria and Iraq, ISIS as a global terrorist organization remains a deadly threat to the United States. Director Travers, we know that ISIS-K and other affiliates of ISIS want to strike the U.S. homeland. Please tell us more about their ability to do this and what we are doing to mitigate this threat.
Thanks for the question, Senator. Yes, of all of the branches and networks of ISIS, ISIS-K is certainly one of those of most concern. Probably in the neighborhood of 4,000 individuals or so. We certainly share the concerns of both the U.S. military and the embassy in theater. They have attempted to certainly inspire attacks outside of Afghanistan. They attempted last year to conduct a suicide attack in India. It failed. They've actually tried a couple of years ago, I think, to inspire an attack against New York that the FBI interrupted. And there was an attack in Stockholm in 2017, I believe, that killed 5 people. So they certainly have got a desire, and the propaganda would indicate that they want to conduct attacks outside of Afghanistan, thus far relatively limited. I would say that we saw attack claims by ISIS-K ramping up throughout 16, 17, 18, somewhat lower at the beginning of this year, although now I think we're looking at about an attack a day or so. Yeah. And interestingly, only about an hour and a half ago, they were the latest ISIS branch to declare allegiance to the new head of ISIS.
Thank you for that. Director Wray, I have a question for you about ransomware, but just before I do, I wanted to thank your team in New Hampshire. We recently had a field hearing about the threats to our houses of worship, in particular from domestic terrorism, and Supervisory Senior Resident Agent Michael Gibley was very helpful, and I think our leaders, our faith leaders, have been very encouraged by his work with them, so thank you and him for that. As to ransomware, we are seeing the impact of it across the country, including an attack in my home state of New Hampshire. Threat actors target every aspect of our communities, from healthcare providers to our small businesses and even to state and local governments themselves, as they did in New Hampshire. Last week, I talked with CISA Director Krebs about what the Department of Homeland Security is doing to assist state and local entities facing ransomware attacks. Director Wray, what is the FBI doing to address the threat of ransomware attacks on our communities? Is it tracking the number of ransomware attacks on our country? And how is the FBI coordinating with Department of Homeland Security in these efforts?
So first off, Senator, appreciate the feedback on the meeting up in New Hampshire. On ransomware specifically, I think what we're seeing is a shift to more and more targeted ransomware attacks, more and more targeting, for example, municipalities, and there are a variety of reasons why municipalities are particularly vulnerable victims to ransomware attacks. We are also seeing more enterprise-level ransomware attacks, where it essentially affects every computer in the organization. One of the things that we're trying to do wherever we can is figure out through our unique role as both a law enforcement agency and an intelligence agency. There have been times where, for example, we're able to reverse engineer a decryption key. So I can think, for example, we had a case in the Northwest, for example, small business, 600 people, crippling ransomware attack, potentially all those people about to lose their jobs, the company to go under. But because of our investigative work, we were able to reverse engineer a decryption key. They didn't have to pay the ransom. They got their systems back online, and a lot of nice thank you notes from those 600
I bet.
employees. As far as working with DHS, the basic lanes in the road, if you will, we work very closely together. The FBI is the lead on the threat,
Right?
and DHS is the lead on the asset. And essentially, we work together in that respect.
Okay. It's something that I think in a lot of the work we've done as a committee, we are hearing more and more concern from our local stakeholders about it, and also really want to help all of the various agencies coordinate and share information as effectively as possible. Director Travers, I wanted to go back to the issue of domestic terrorism. In the aftermath of 9/11, the federal government built a robust and capable counterterrorism architecture, establishing new departments, centers, and counterterrorism information sharing mechanisms to support state and local partners and address a foreign terrorist attack threat unlike any we had seen before. Today, 18 years later, we face a surge in domestic terrorism, and you'll hear it from everybody on this committee. You've heard it already in some of the questions, including rising threats against houses of worship. If we are to prevent domestic terrorist attacks, we have to start treating these incidents as seriously as we did when al-Qaeda and other foreign terrorist organizations have threatened or attacked us after 9/11. Director Travers, the National Counterterrorism Center was created after 9/11 to respond to threats from al-Qaeda. The center is responsible for ensuring that we effectively integrate and share terrorist-related information in order to prevent attacks. Can you share your thoughts on the current state of domestic terrorism information sharing? What does the U.S. government need to do amid this rising threat to ensure that intelligence isn't missed and that it gets to the people who need to know it?
I'll start, but I think probably pass it to Director Wray. The Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act that created NCTC, written by this committee, gave a number of statutory responsibilities to NCTC in the realm of international terrorism. There are references in the legislation to domestic terrorism, but quite clearly the Bureau would have the lead, and I view NCTC as being in support. So we have I think a lot of things we can do, and our staffs are working on sort of laying out the parameters, but things like addressing issues of radicalization and mobilization, kind of left-to-boom kinds of questions that NCTC's done a lot of work with our partners on the international terrorism side. I think it's pretty clear that the processes look a lot alike in terms of using social media and the internet and so forth. And so we're broadening our aperture there and collectively writing at the unclassified and the FOUO so we can get that kind of information to our state and local partners. Where I think NCTC has particular value add is in some senses, domestic terrorism is a bit of a misnomer because of the international connections. And so we work a great deal with our partners around the globe because everyone is struggling with this problem right now and trying to figure out how to deal with it. And so we can bring a lot of analytic horsepower and potentially collection to the international problem set, and then in that regard, help the Bureau.
Thank you. And I see that I am over time. I don't know if the chair would like Director Wray to comment now or take it up another time.
Briefly?
Well, I think, I guess the short version would be that we are, in addition to everything that Director Travers has said, we are looking very hard at some trend of, for example, white supremacists or neo-Nazis here connecting through social media online with like-minded individuals overseas, and in some cases actually traveling overseas to train. And so, as Director Travers said, we are engaging a lot with our Five Eyes partners and others like that as we're comparing notes on this threat.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.